All right, welcome to the All Access Entertainment Podcast. I am your host, Joseph Bruen, here joined this week by a very special guest. It is a true treat, a piece of my childhood, for sure, without a doubt. He's a singer, a songwriter, a pianist, an author. The list goes on. The great Kevin Roth, thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, thanks for calling me great.
You're great every day, and you're shining here today on our platform, and I appreciate you taking the time and being here. You know, let's rewind. We're going to talk about delve right into your career, but let's talk about the early days, growing up in Philadelphia. When did you first discover music? What are some of your earliest memories of music?
Well, the very earliest was in elementary school when I used to have to sing Good Morning to You in this auditorium. They would gather all the little people, their short little legs, go into the auditorium, and they had this woman, a teacher, played the piano, and I vaguely remember what she looked like, but I remember her perfume, and it was potent and sweet, and it was great. So that's how they started the day. But then I would come home and I would play things by ear on the piano, and at the time, nobody knew I could play the piano. In fact, my father used to work in the basement. He had a shop there, and he heard someone playing the piano, and he came up with a club because he thought that there was a robber in the house, and he saw it was me. Fortunately, he didn't whack me over the head, but that was the earliest that I remember. And then my whole life changed when my oldest sister brought home the very first Peter, Paul, and Mary album. And I fell in love with Mary and their music. And that about started me on the whole road.
And you started the piano at, as you said, at such a young age. You know, when did it really start to, take off? And what made you decide to kind of just stick with it? I mean, it's easy for somebody to just start and then, start something else. But you kept going with it.
Well, I'm an artist. So I played by ear. To this day, I still really can't read music that well. I'm kind of dyslexic, but it doesn't matter. It's just who I was. I really, and the two things that I remember vividly is that I was musical and that I was born very, very spiritual. And I have no idea why, because my family wasn't. But I was aware that something was going on. Today in spirituality, they call it awareness. But life didn't make sense to me. Even at a young age, it was like, what's going on here? This doesn't seem like anything that's like normal, or why is the moon not falling? So my musical search really intertwined with my spiritual search as a young kid. And later it would develop bigger in both directions.
And Peter, Paul, and Mary, as you said, was such an inspiration for you personally. Growing up, as you got a little older and you continued with the music, what were some of your very first concerts that you were able to attend as a fan?
Peter, Paul, and Mary. They used to come to Philadelphia every October towards the end. And that little picture of them, the little ad in the Philadelphia Inquirer, and I would just go nuts. And I'll tell you an interesting story. Back then, the very first ticket was $2.50. It was up in the balcony. And I remember exactly that seat because I was sitting almost in front of a pole at the Academy of Music. It's a beautiful old opera house. And many, many years later, I ended up performing on the same stage with the Philadelphia Orchestra. And during the sound check, I put the dulcimer on the chair and I ran all the way up to that seat that I sat in for Peter, Paul, and Mary. And I looked down on the stage and I saw my dulcimer and the chair and the microphones. Of course, no one had come into the hall yet. And I couldn't believe it. I could not believe that was my ass on that stage instead of Peter, Paul, and Mary or Joni Mitchell. And I got to be very friendly with Peter, Paul, and Mary. They became very good friends of mine and mentors. And it was a sweet memory.
Yeah, in 2006, working with your mentor, Noel Paul Stuckey, of course, from Peter, Paul, and Mary, what was it like to go from being such a huge fan, they were a big inspiration, to actually working with them? And like you said, you know, he being your mentor.
Well, I met Peter when I was 12. I had the audacity to find his phone number in New York Directory Assistance.
Yeah.
And he said that when he came to Philadelphia, he'd call me. I told him I was the president of the Peter, Paul, and Mary fan club. That's what I told him. And he came to CBS TV to do an interview, just him. And he called me up. My father drove me down. And that's when I first met him. And then years later, I met Mary. It was when they had split up. They split up for 9 years to pursue solo things, and ended up being her opening act at a club in Philly called the Bijou. And I'll tell you a funny story about her. She'd finished her sound check it was a little club. It was maybe 200 seats. And I hopped up on stage as she was walking up to her dressing room. There were long stairs to get to the dressing room. And I hopped up on stage and I got to the piano and I started to play my blues version of Leaving on a Jet Plane. And I saw her lean over the bow, over the banister, and her long blonde hair. And she uttered her first words to me, and I'll never forget them. And they were, you're not doing my hit. But we became very good friends, and she knew that I just adored her. And then when they got back together, they were in Wisconsin when I was giving a concert in Wisconsin, and I went backstage, and Noel just started to talk to me. He told me he was a fan of mine, which is very strange because, how does that happen?
Yeah.
And he offered to sing on a new album of mine called Between the Notes. And that's how our relationship began. And Noel is a very spiritual guy. And later he asked me to write a somewhat spiritual album for his own label, New World, and it was called Reawakening. So I really had been friendly with him for 45 years. And of course, Peter and Mary have passed on, but Noel's still around. And in fact, I just heard from him yesterday. I sent him a picture of me and Tom Paxton from the Philadelphia Folk Festival when I was in my teens.
And you've experienced so many things. You've been a part of really so many big things within the music industry, and you've worked under labels like Sony Music and Random House and Book of the Month Club, National Geographic. Why don't you tell us briefly about that journey and being with different labels and what that experience was like early on for you?
Well, I signed with Folkways as a dulcimer player when I was 15, because my first album came out when I was 16. And because there weren't many dulcimer albums out there, I became kind of known. And also I was known and was signed to Folkways because I had a very innovative style of playing dulcimer rather than just the traditional folk way. And the reason that happened was because I didn't know how to play I didn't have any books. I didn't know how to play the dulcimer. I just figured it was my portable piano. So it didn't dawn on me you couldn't play Somewhere Over the Rainbow or Sergio Mendes in Brazil 66. I mean, it was limited in notes. So I became known as an innovative dulcimer player because I just didn't know there was a path. And that I did a decade with Folkways, and they're all in print. They're all part of the Smithsonian now. And then just by happenstance, I guess I got into children's music, and that's when my career really took off. And I got into children's music because I heard that there was an upcoming business in it, like it was going to be big. I had no interest in children. I had no interest in children's music, but I needed to make a living, and folk music wasn't doing it. So I made a children's album, and it won an award. And that's when I got booked at the Academy of Music with Philadelphia Orchestra. And suddenly I was making money, and I started my own record label, which was a good idea because I was actually making money on, instead of a royalty, I was making way more money by just pressing the records myself. And it was one of those albums called Lullabies for Little Dreamers that caught the ear of a producer of PBS TV, Rick Sigelko, and the show was called Shining Time Station. And he brought me into New York, and he put his daughter to bed with my music every night. And he said, I'd love for you to sing the theme song. And he said it was going to star Ringo. And he thought it would be big. And if I was willing to do it, he thought it could change my career. And he was right. So I did it. And suddenly, because Shining Time Station was such a big hit, I was now playing the concert halls that Peter, Paul, and Mary were playing and getting thousands of dollars rather than a couple $100 begging for a folk gig at some club.
Yeah.
And because of the popularity of the show, and because I owned my own label and I had a lot of records because I was just constantly writing and recording and writing and recording, Sony Records caught on to this new wave of children's music because of Raffi and Barney, and they licensed my entire back catalog, and we did one album together. Random House put out some cassettes with some books that they created from my music. And then I did a lot of licensing with Book of the Month Club and stuff like that. But except for Folkways, I never enjoyed working for any other label because there was, it's not that I'm too much of a control freak, but their ideas were not my ideas.
Right.
So, but I made a lot of money. Unfortunately, during the .com boom, I lost most of it, but I had a taste of fame and fortune for a while.
And early
and then
on,
I got out of the whole thing.
Yeah.
And started to do painting. That's one of my paintings in the back. And then eventually got back into the dulcimer music with something called Dulce Meditation, when I became a sort of a spiritual life coach kind of person.
Sure. And how did you get to that point where you started your own label? Because I feel like with a lot of artists, they kind of just go with the flow, and maybe they don't have, that decision making in making that. So it's such a big move, obviously, to do something like that. And it's easier to just kind of, okay, we'll just kind of go with the flow. So how did you get to that point where you actually made that decision?
It was my father. He said, just start your own label. And I said, I don't have the money to make a record and I don't know how to produce it. And he said, well, I'll give you the money. He says, what's it going to cost you? A couple $100? And I said, yeah, but how do I sell it? He said, well, how did the other labels sell your music? And I said, well, distributors. He said, so call them up and say, I'm now on my own label. That was it.
Wow. And when you're creating your own music, it's different for every artist. But when you're creating your music, do you find you're more so searching for, what you're looking for, or does it just kind of come to you naturally?
I go with the muse.
Mm-hmm.
So when the inspiration comes, I just pick up a dulcimer, because I don't have a piano here anymore. But I'll pick up a dulcimer and just start writing.
Wow. And you've also made 2 appearances at the White House. What was that experience like for you?
Well, they were both Democrats. So that was good. Well, it was very interesting. I was my own agent, so I guess I must have booked it or somehow gotten there. Peter, Paul, and Mary was there. I have a great picture of me singing with them. Sherry Lewis and Lamb Chop. I don't know if you remember her.
Yes.
I got to meet her. She was one of my heroes. And it was very, very cold outside. It was very, very cold. And so I sang. That's the one I remember. The other one that I did for them, I don't remember that. I don't know why. It must have not been that big of a deal or to me or whatever. Yeah. The first time was a big deal.
Sure, absolutely. Not everybody has that opportunity, so to get the honor twice is certainly big. You mentioned Shining Time Station. It was such a huge hit, like you said. It really took off. Nobody knew if it was going to take off or not, but obviously, Thomas the Train would go on to be one of the biggest platforms for children that there is. So, kind of take us back to those early days when it first started, before it really took off, and what that experience was like for you being a part of that.
Well, to be honest with you, they paid me a one-time fee. It's called a work for hire. Mm-hmm. And my music attorney did not want me to do it because he wanted me to get royalties, but they were not going to pay royalties. And I always listened to my music attorney except that time.
Wow.
And every cell in my body said, do it. So I did it. And the show was a hit immediately. It didn't take any time to grow. It just came out and it seemed like it just took off.
Yeah.
And then when I would go give concerts, it was kind of strange because when I would sing the theme song, it was like, it was my hit. Even though I didn't write it, I was known for that. And, you go from hardly being known to suddenly having a hit that people applaud and go crazy over, and they come to hear you sing it. It's kind of comical in a way, But that song was written by a guy named Joe Raposo, and it was the last song that he wrote before he passed away.
Wow.
And later, after the show ended, and it became even bigger as a cult following thing, there was a guy in Canada who was just ape shit about this. I mean, just nuts about the show. And he gathered a lot of the cast and their producers on YouTube. And I was a surprise guest, and I took out my dulcimer and I sang the song, a little different version of it. And now they're making some sort of a documentary about the thing, which I just did an interview for. So it was, it's like a dream. It's
Right.
well, it is a dream spiritually, but it's, you go from nothing to something.
Yeah. And it's one of those things that just took off, and it still lives on to this day. Like you said, it just continues in different forms and fashions. And, people my age are introducing it to my kids, and, so on and so forth. So it's one of those things it'll never die. It'll just continue. And, it's just great to look back on. Great childhood memories. And, obviously music, a huge form of art. And then, of course, the art behind you that you pointed out. When did that start for you? When did you start to produce these wonderful pieces?
I was in Provincetown, which is a big art colony it's on the tip of Cape Cod. And I just was walking down this hill, and I don't know, no one's ever asked me this, and I've never mentioned it before, but I started to see colors that I'd never seen before. Like reds were suddenly red, yellows were yellow. And it was like someone took a veil off my eyes. Yeah. And I went to the local hardware store where they sold paint. And I asked this woman, I said, I want to start painting. And she said, well, do you want to do oil, acrylic? I said, I don't know the difference. She said, well, start with acrylic. And there was a piece of driftwood I found on the beach, and I brought it home. I brought it back to the guest house I was at, and I started to paint. And it was quite unusual for me. It was like, well, where did this come from? Yeah. And then when I moved to San Diego, and I had kind of taken a break from the music business, I started to paint things like this. And someone saw it and started to collect my work.
Wow.
And the next thing I know is I did one art show where people came, and I think it was at the convention center in San Diego. Anyway, there was a big, like 42 by 42 canvas that I had painted black, and then had painted flowers on it. And they were terrible flowers, just terrible. So I thought I'd repaint the canvas, but I thought, let me repaint it green, but I had different color greens, and I had different brushes. So I was just, while I was standing there and people were watching, different artists do different things, I just kind of went like that with, randomly, just to see what green I wanted. And this woman came up and she said, how much are the water lilies? And I said, what water lilies? And she pointed to what I'd been doing. And I thought, oh, she sees those as water lilies. Oh, that's right, the reeds. And she asked me how much it was. And I think it had cost me maybe $100 or $200 in material. Yeah. And I don't know how I managed to do this, but I said, well, guess how much it is. And she said, oh, I don't want to guess. I said, no, go ahead. Because I'm thinking if I could get, 400, I'd double my money.
Right.
She said between $5,000 and $6,000. I said, that's right, 5,500. So she paid me six, and she hung it. She had me come and hang it in her office.
Wow. Wow.
And then I started to paint my own album covers.
Oh, wow.
So I'm kind of an abstract painter, It's like that. That happened, and you can't see it because below my head are a bunch of paintbrushes that I glued on there. That piece happened because I had all this paint I was going to throw out, and I didn't know what to do with it. So I did that whole thing in like maybe a half hour.
Wow.
And people love it.
Impressive.
But it's just kind of 1, 2, 3.
And going back to that day in Provincetown where those colors were coming off so strong to you, more so than usual, that seems like the true definition of a calling, and it brought you into what you love to do now. And that's fantastic. It just added another layer to what you were already, a part of in the world of artistry.
Mm-hmm. It just opened up like that.
Yeah. And what would you say is the best piece of advice that you've ever received?
On anything or the music business?
Within the music industry.
The best piece of it. Well, Mo Ash, who ran Folkways, told me when I was 16 and I was beginning to make my record, I was sitting in his office in New York, and he said, if you stick with it, you'll do well. So he was right. The other great advice I got was from Pete Seeger, who told me, don't have any debt, own your own home, and sing for 30 people or 3,000. So I don't have any debt, but I don't own a home anymore. And I don't I don't really give many concerts anymore, but that was some really good advice. And then my father, do it yourself.
Yeah. And that certainly worked for sure, And going back to those concert days when you were out there hitting different cities, what were some of your favorite cities or favorite venues to perform in?
Well, certainly the Academy of Music in Philadelphia, because that was my hometown. The Mariposa Folk Festival was really big. I don't know. I didn't do a lot of touring, but I did 2 months straight, which was really exhausting for I think it was community concerts or something like that. And it was just one string of one-nighters and driving 5 hours between dates. And that was very successful. But those are the things that come to mind. I have a few really bad memories. You have some of those too. The biggest thing was during a Peter, Paul, Mary concert, I was backstage talking to Mary with one of her friends who had co-written a song with me. And she loved it, and she got all excited, and she had me sing the song on stage during her solo part of the concert, which had only been done once before in their 50-year history. I have a picture of it because the girl I was with at the time took a picture of me on stage and Mary sitting at my feet.
Wow.
So that was probably, like a dream come true kind of deal.
Yeah. I mean, it seems like you said earlier, all of this has kind of been a dream. I mean, you've experienced all the things that you could only imagine, with your favorite artist growing up, and now you're experiencing it with them. And they're such a big part of it. And whether it be the creation or the mentorship or whatever it may be, how did you get from Awakings to Reawakening? Why don't you kind of give us that story per Noel? You kind of, recommended that.
Well, I had been going through a really, really depressing time. My father had just died, a 9-year relationship had ended, and I was almost broke. For various reasons. And I wrote this album called Awakening. And I did it in a local studio. And I had a feeling something was going to happen with it, but I didn't know what. And it didn't sell very much because Spotify and all these other people had come along, and now no one pays for anything.
Right.
But I got a call one night from Noel that he'd been listening to that album on the drive home from a show. called me up and he said, we got to do something with this album. I said, well, what do you want to do? And he said, let's redo some of the songs, and why don't you write a bunch of new ones? And he wanted to call it Reawakening. So it was a very bizarre time for me, because at that time I was living in Kansas. I'd moved out there to hang out with my sister until I figured out what my next move in life was. And it was a very choppy time. And so I wrote the album. His idea was to do the album with just dulcimer and synthesizer. And he knew a guy named Michael McGinnis, who was in Maine, where Noel lives part-time. So I didn't really meet Michael, but I just sent Noel the tracks, of my singing and the dulcimer tracks. And then he did his thing with Michael. And, and the strangest thing about that record is it's very deep spiritually, because I was going through a lot of soul searching. And a week after I finished and delivered everything, I was diagnosed with stage 3 melanoma and told I had like 2 years to live. Obviously, they were wrong.
Right.
But I remember calling him up and saying, I don't know how to tell you this, but my music career started with you, and it looks like it's going to end with you, because they think I'm going to be checking out. I don't think so. And he said, well, if anyone can pull it through, it's you. And somehow or another, by miracle, it never came back. And I wasn't even sick. I didn't have to do anything. So I left Kansas not long after that, gladly. And then I came to San Diego and sort of started a whole new life. So that's the whole spiritual thing that I write about in between the notes, my book.
Sure. And let's talk about your book. We're going to talk about that coming up. What inspired you to put a book out there, and where can fans purchase that book?
You can get it on Amazon. Okay. And I wrote it to sort of put it all behind me. Kind of a, cathartic thing. I had no intentions of writing any more books, although I'm writing one now called Come Sit Down, There's Something I Want to Talk to You About. Which is what my father used to say to me on the rare occasions he had something serious to talk to me about. And that's about non-duality and feeling him coming to me, even though he's passed on, and all that kind of stuff. That's going to be only as a PDF, because I'm not printing any books. And I want to include music links in it. So the only place to get that will be from me, kevinroth.org. And I don't know, we're almost in August 2026. I don't know when people are watching or hearing this, but it'll probably be out towards the end of the year.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah, this will be out in about 2 weeks or so. So.
Okay.
What does the art of music mean to you? What's the definition, in your opinion?
For me, it's channeling. And it's, Paul Simon once said writing music is like psychotherapy. and he was right. And Dylan and Leonard Cohen both said it accurately. We don't write the songs. How I got into the dulcimer was even more bizarre, because my mother had just died, and I ended up at a meditation gathering, which I had no interest in, but someone I knew had said, why don't you go with this guy, Chuck? And, he knows this girl that looks and sounds like Joni Mitchell, who I was a huge fan of. And there was a girl in the kitchen of this place. She was playing a dulcimer. I'd never seen one, never met her. And I just knew that was my magic carpet ride. And what was interesting is that she was getting out of folk music because she had gotten into this Sufi guru teacher in Philadelphia named Bawa Mahayadeen. And because I was curious about Anne and the dulcimer, I followed her. So the dulcimer led me to the whole spiritual thing. So that was something that had started when I was, like I said, around 10. I don't know how, no one in my family was spiritual or anything like that. But I don't like the word life coach. I like the word teacher. And the reason that I teach spirit, I call it practical spirituality, is because I'm not big on woo woo. I don't like any form of bullshit at all.
Yeah.
If you start doing it to me, I'm out. I'm gone. I just don't like it. And someone suggested that I become a life coach because I had changed my entire life from a death sentence to reinventing it.
Yeah.
So when I was in California, someone had suggested that, and I didn't even know what it was. And I ended up talking to a very successful one. And I had a dulcimer hanging on the wall. And I said, well, if I get into that kind of thing, the music is going to be sidelined. And he said, no, no, no. He said, you got it all wrong. How you play the dulcimer is very meditative. It's like dulcine meditation. And I went, ah. So because I was so known in the dulcimer world, and because there was so many Facebook groups on dulcimer, I said, if you want to chill out and change your life and feel unstuck and use a dulcimer to help do it, let me know. And I got some clients, and that's how it started. And then I realized that I was really good at it, and loved it. And so the dulcimer went from, concerts and all that kind of stuff to teaching people dulcimer meditation, which is very, very, very simple. Mm. So that's kind of how the music flowed into that part of my life. And just recently, interestingly enough, and I was just writing about this in my book, I never liked marketing or promoting, but I especially don't like it now. And it dawned on me that the reason I'm not on Instagram and taking 26,000 pictures of me every minute and posting them is because I have no interest in fame. I've been there, done it. It happened. It was nice. A lot of people got into dulcimer because of my music. I don't take any credit for it. It was just kind of like how I bumbled down the road. But I have no interest in fame. This one life coach said, you could be a rock star. You could make 100,000 a month. I said, I have no interest in that. I just want to work with people who are interested in working with me, and it'll all work out. And it has. I only work with a handful of people, and it just keeps evolving and evolving.
Yeah. You're giving back now, and you're finding yourself, in that teacher role now, and you've really come full circle, and you're doing what your mentor, did for you. Now you're doing that for others. What advice do you have for somebody who's maybe on the fence? They are musically inclined, but they don't know how to make that next move. What advice do you have for them?
There's the music, and then there's the business. And this has always been a difficult business, but it's really hard now because nobody's getting paid. Artists receive very little money from Spotify or any of these downloading things, or, it's a mess. But if you have the drive and you just want people to hear what you're doing, there are ways to do it on the internet, but it's all internet. It's all on the internet. You don't even need a record label. 12-year-olds can take their cell phone and do something and get 100,000 followers. I don't have the interest or energy to keep up with that kind of stuff and constantly promote. And there are people who contact me from time to time who say, we can get your music out there and, you can start touring. Not interested in it. Yeah. So my advice is, if you feel a need to be an artist and you have to get it out of your soul and into the world, do it. And if it's meant to be, the right direction or the right people will come up and lead you that way. I don't have any interest in touring. I do maybe 2 shows, 3 shows a year. But I'm always writing, and I put it out there. I don't expect to make any money from it, but I put it out there. But then things come along, like you become a life coach. You never saw that coming, and that pays way more than the music business.
Sure.
So my advice is, if you're an artist, be an artist, and you can't make someone an artist. Artists are born.
Right.
if you want to learn music like the dulcimer or piano, and you just enjoy it, and you want to do weddings and bar mitzvahs and bars, there are a lot of people really happy doing that. I'm not, but a lot of people like that. They like traveling and airplanes and hotels, and I'm not. That's not me anymore.
Yeah. And Peter, Paul, and Mary are obviously at the very top for you. But if you had to kind of put together your own Mount Rushmore of music, who would maybe be the three others that you would kind of put there that have been your favorites or your greatest inspirations?
Well, Joni Mitchell would be up there. Interestingly enough, Rosemary Clooney, because I love jazz, and I knew her, and I loved her music. I thought she was really very. She was always very sweet to me. I used to give her my new children's albums because her daughter-in-law was Debbie Boone, and Debbie Boone kept having kids. So it was like I'd give the music to Rose, and Rose would give it to Debbie Boone. Let's see, who else do I like? I don't know. I listen to a lot of jazz. So, but growing up, I listened to Sergio Mendes and Brazil '66, Judy Collins, Peter, Paul, and Mary. And then there's some really old dulcimer players, like from years and years and years ago, that I like to listen to on occasion.
And a two-part question for you. Within the music industry, what would you say has been your greatest challenge? And then on the other side of that, most rewarding for you?
Well, making it as a singing dulcimer player is a challenge.
Yeah.
It also helped because back when I started, not many people were playing dulcimer. So that was the biggest challenge, and keeping up the stamina for booking concerts, writing the records, recording. I mean, I was really a one-man show. For some reason or another, I could never find a good manager. I had a good agent for a while until she retired. But I thought that if I got rich and famous, I'd be happy. And that's not the case, because I got there and I wasn't that happy. I think for an artist, any artist, there's a spiritual element where they have to do what they have to do because it's something inside them that needs to get out,
Right.
Be expressed. So that's the challenge. It's almost like you have to do it. It's like eating. I've been playing dulcimer 56 years, and there's rarely a day that goes by when I don't pick it up for 5 minutes and just play it.
Right. How about the rewarding?
I forgot the second part of your question.
The most rewarding. That's okay.
Most rewarding about my music career?
Yeah.
Well, it's that so many people liked what I did. I mean, that people grew up on my children's music. People got into playing dulcimer, because of me. And I don't really take any credit for it. It's just sort of like how my life evolved. A lot of people don't know this, so I think I wrote about it in between the notes. I didn't even like doing children's music. I did it for the money. I sold out.
Yeah.
After I retired, I started to like kids. But the reason that happened is because I couldn't make much money as a folk singer. So I had to sing to toddlers like This Old Man and She'll Be Coming Around the Mountain. Kids that age don't want to hear my love songs like
Right.
Joni Mitchell. Little kids like that are about themselves, which is how it should be. But I didn't know it at the time because I was in my early 30s. I didn't have any kids. So the amazing thing is that I made some really good music that a lot of people loved. I just didn't like doing it until I got past it. And then I look back at my catalog, or occasionally I would hear something come on the radio or something like that. And I'd go, it's like this happened almost in spite of myself. And it was like wonderful. It's like, oh my God, I mean, kids went to bed. Listen, I'll tell you a story, I'll tell you two quick ones how things affected me. A woman came up to me right before I was going to go on stage for a children's concert. And she gave me a folded program. And she said, I just wanted to tell you that my daughter, Marty, loved your song Lullaby Bears. She would go to sleep every night to it. So I hope it was okay that we used, the lyrics of your song for her memorial service. So this girl had died when she was about 5 or 6, and I couldn't believe it. I was so moved by that, and I changed the title of the song on that album from Lullaby Bears, and then in parentheses Marty's song.
Oh, wow.
And then another time when I was packing up from a show and really ready to get out of there, this woman came up with a little son. He had cute little blonde hair, and he was in tears because I didn't sing the song called Honey Bear that I'd written. And my normal response back then would be, well, maybe next time I'll sing, And something inside me just said, come up on stage. And I put him on the piano seat and I sang him Honey Bear, which was out of character for me back then. It would be in character for me to do it now because I'm kinder and I'm not as angry, nowhere near. I'm not angry at all, actually. But back then, there was a lot of turbulence in my life. So in spite of myself, like the John Prine song, In Spite of Ourselves, this beautiful thing happened for a lot of people, like probably millions, I guess, people who heard Shining Time Station. And it was my life lesson to go through all of that stuff to get to where I am now. Now I think kids are a stitch. I see them in the, I have a little dog named Bosco, and I take him everywhere I go, and little kids come up. So it's like I had to look back and say, oh, wow, as unhappy as you kind of were in between times when there was a great deal of joy and success, all of this happened.
Yeah.
It's like someone, I guess, who builds a house and sweats and doesn't get to see the people who are enjoying living in it and creating families in it. So in hindsight, I look back and I go, I can't believe it. All that was pulled off, but none of it was of my doing. I mean, it was just sort of the instrument that it kind of went through.
Yeah. Yeah. Once you realize the difference that it makes for people, and, music really moves a lot of people in different ways. And like you said, you can build it, but you don't always see what it does for other people. So being able to experience that, even in just some instances, is a big deal. It makes all the difference, really.
Yeah. I did a podcast interview yesterday and they said I had 65 albums or something like that. And I was like, how did I do 65? And it's just, you just do it. And through your ups and downs, your good times and your bad times, a lot of great Joni Mitchell albums were written out of heartbreak and despair. And God knows she was more disgusted with the music business than I ever was. Right. But look at what she's done. And now in hindsight, after her aneurysm and her popularity, she's like a little old lady who's just giggling at all the artists she inspired. But when I was doing it to kind of, get it out there because I'm an artist and I had to promote it to make a living. But I didn't have any idea of what kind of effect it would have. I was just sort of more driven to, all right, I got to write the next record. I got to book the next tour. I got to do all this. I got to do all that. It was, some musicians are just full of joy and they just love it from day one and they're happy. That wasn't my path. My path was to really struggle and have a really bouncy life until I got cancer, and then I got a wake-up call. And I thought, okay, why don't you just do what you want to do in the way you want to do it? Because, you had a chance to redo your life and then see what happens.
Sure.
So that's what I do now. That's why I'm joyous about what I do.
Yeah. And through all the accomplishments and different projects that you've been a part of over the years, you're right around 58 years in the music industry now. What would that number one favorite moment be for you? If you could pick one moment, whether it be within performances or people you've met or, a piece that you've created, what's that number one moment for you?
When I saw the dulcimer for the very first time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because I felt a complete shift.
And what's next for Kevin Roth?
Well, I'll have to ask him. Well, I'm writing this book about what is life and what is reality, because I'm into that kind of stuff, and it deals with um, how spirituality and quantum physics merge into what is real and what is not real. Musically, I'm still writing. It seems to be a bunch of instrumentals. No songs have come, and I think the reason for that is because I write for Substack. I have a thing on Substack, and so I write articles and thoughts and stuff like that. So I think lyrically, that's where all that energy is going. I don't see a new album because I don't know who would buy it, but I still might do it at some point. But right now, I don't have any urge to do that. It seems to just keep creating on the dulcimer, and instead of wanting to be in the in the spotlight, I become more and more withdrawn. And I'm not looking for fame. I'm not looking, to push my stuff on Spotify. I have friends that do that, but I just don't feel that that's my path. My path
Sure.
is to expose people to the spiritual lessons that I've learned, which have literally kind of saved my life, and from the clients that I've had, changed their lives for the better. I mean, on my website, you can read all the testimonials, and it all happened because of the dulcimer.
Yeah. And fast forward many years from now, looking at your career as a whole, your life as a whole, how would you like to be remembered? What do you want your legacy to be?
Well, I think if people discover your music, some little person decides that they want to pick up a dulcimer and they come across my music, that's great. If they come across anything that I've done creatively, I think that's great. I don't know. Someone said your life is an anomaly. It's very strange, and it has been. But I'm in a really good place because I think when you become more spiritually aware, less of those things matter, like fame. I don't need to go to bars. I don't need to be around a lot of people. I'm quite content having a handful of people and being by myself and walking on the ocean. Walking along, not on the ocean, that would be a Jesus thing. Walking along the ocean, and just being really chill. The reason I do the podcasts and I do a lot of these things is really, I think that people who are interested in specific areas like yours hear me that way.
Yeah.
And I don't do I don't do a lot of them. I'm selective as to who I talk to, because I want to be sure that they know who I am. I've had people interview me and not know a clue about
Oh,
who
wow.
I was,
Okay.
which I find kind of funny. But that's my form of publicity, and just really sharing things, like someone may hear this and may say, I want to check out his dulcimer music, or I've been looking for someone to help me on the spiritual path and include music with it. This guy sounds like he's cool. I don't know.
Yeah.
And so I just let it unfold. I really kind of let everything just happen because that's how it is anyway.
Right. Now, would you be up for giving us a little bit of your Shining Time Station?
You mean singing it?
Yeah.
So I don't have the dulcimer with me that would be in that tune, but it's, if I can remember the lyrics, it's like, reach for the sun, is that, no, what are the, reach for the sun, I don't know. Reach for the whistle, go where the rail may run. To a shining time station where dreams come true. Waiting there for you. If I had remembered that I was supposed to, or I don't even know if you asked for me to do it, I would have dug up the lyrics, but.
Oh, that's okay.
Yeah.
Brings back great memories.
Yeah, it's a sweet song. It was a really sweet show.
Yeah.
I haven't seen it in a really long time, and obviously I haven't sung this song in years. But the reason that show is such a great show and continues to be is because it was sweet. It taught great lessons, and there was nothing AI about it. Nothing. It was puppets. They were actors. And I wrote a couple music videos for it, and that's what people are looking for now. They're looking to get away from the unbelievable. You don't know what you're looking at these days. Is it AI or is it real? And I think that it really touched the heart that way.
I have an emotional connection personally to that song. You know, I had a great childhood. I'm grateful. And whenever I hear that song, it takes me back to that very childhood. I mean, I could literally just, picture me sitting there watching it, and it's just something that has always stuck with me. So I thank you for that, and thank you for creating that, because it's something that'll always be a part of me.
Well, I'm glad it did the trick for you. I'll tell you a quick story about that song. They sent me the track to sing it, and it was out of my register. So I had to take it to my voice teacher to learn how to hit the high notes.
Ah.
So when I went into New York, they only did 2 takes of it, and I managed to kind of nail it. I wish I had kind of remembered the lyrics to sing it a little better. Maybe the next show I'll actually get the dulcimer that I play it on, and get it out and redo it for you. But I think that the people who really love Shining Time Station have good hearts, because it's a good heart show. There's nothing like mean about the show, except what was that guy Not Kramer? What was his name?
Oh, geez, I forgot his name.
Yeah, but he was
Schemer, right?
Yeah, Schemer. Yeah, but that was just a comical thing, and he always ended up being set straight. Yeah.
Well, Kevin, thank you so much. I appreciate you taking the time. Appreciate you being here. And I just want to thank you first and foremost for, all that you have done and all that you've put out there, and all of your accomplishments. It's been great to follow your work. And I actually haven't picked up a copy of your book, so I would like to definitely do that. I'll be doing that soon, and look forward to reading it.
Okay. Well, thanks for having me. It's good talking to you.
Thank you so much. For Kevin Roth, I'm Joseph Bruen, and this has been the All Access Entertainment Podcast. Don't forget to like, subscribe, leave your comments. Love to hear from you, the fans, and what you thought of this interview. And thank you so much. We'll see you next time.